Hello and welcome. This is Module 10. Um, Risk management is more into protecting your network, protecting your user, protecting your data, how to can prevent things to happen in my network to, you know, uh, secure my data. So we'll see technologies that we can use and how to protect ourselves from malware, increase the security, not only for the data but also with equipment itself. Even the facilities need to be protected. Security and the physical security for intrusion. Uh, Techniques to make those make it more difficult for people to break into your equipment. And some of the policies that you can apply on your enterprise. So everybody have heard about hackers, but the hacker term has changed over the years. In the early days of computers, hackers were people that would try to understand things, break into the equipment to actually fix it, to make it better. Um, Sometimes back then at the beginning, some of the softwares were very close, very not so friendly. So hackers will go in, modify the software, make it easier, sometimes even enhance it and make a new version of the software, a hack version. But nowadays, it's actually hackers are the ones that gain unauthorized access to your system, someone who breaks in to potentially do some damage. So there are certain types, names that you can apply to the hackers. You got the white hat hacker, the black hat hackers, and the gray hat. The white hat it's security experts, hired by any organization to protect the network, make sure that any vulnerability, any holes that you have on your network is actually closed, and no one can actually exploit any of those openings on your network. And the black hat hacker are usually people or groups that are out there to look for a challenge to break in and cause damage. You can steal your data, compromise privacy, and sometimes it's just for fun to just break in, say, hey, I deface the Miami-Dade website. Defacing the website, it means that you take the main web page and you modify it and put your own, or just change it to make it look the way you want it. So you deface the website. So some of the hackers, that's what they do. Nowadays, with the identity theft, then what they want to do is also break, and get personal information. And the gray hat hackers are those that, yeah, they try to break in and all that, but they have a code of ethics, right? Eh, but they do break in, but the intention is actually to educate and assist and say, hey, Miami-Dade, I found a file in your system that has all this information, and I just want to let you know he's not going to use it for any profit or anything else to sell it, but it just has an ethic, says I'm just going to find it, I'm going to let them know. So those are the gray hat. So here you have two terms that you need to remember, and they're quite different. Vulnerability is a weakness on your system. The system is vulnerable to something. They can get in, and either there's somehow they can get into your system and get into that through that hole that you have with your security. An exploit is actually to exploit something, to get in and take advantage of it. So you find the vulnerability and then you exploit it to gain access and do what you need to do. So those are the two main terms. But then zero-day exploit or zero-day attack, it's when they take advantage of your system, but that's when you first get it and no one is aware of it. So this is even when nobody has ever found that software, that flaw on your software, and these people get it and they get into it, right? So usually some of these exploits, they try to get into the system, so they can use one method to get in and then another method to allow them to use it, and another one to get in and get them more access to the system and so on, so they can escalate as they go through it. Now, most of security breaches, believe it or not, happen for human errors. People that they ignore something, or they actually omit to do something. They not only know that they're doing something that it will open a hole or leave a file completely unprotected. They just leave it like that. A case in point, a server manager that installs a server and he doesn't enables a firewall on the server, or he allows remote desktop from anywhere, or systems that a computer system, your desktop, that if the administrator leaves you full access to the computer, you can install and delete software on your desktop. You can create a problem. You can install something that bring a malware or something in your computer, and it'll spread out through the whole enterprise. And that's because they gave you access to install it when you shouldn't have access, any access. No user should have access to modify the computers. So the social engineering is people that actually use um, strategies to gain access to your password. They ask you for your birthday. Hey, what was your dog's name? What was your son's name? No, not the oldest, the youngest, that one. So they use that, and they start trying to hack into your password by looking at those things. And believe it or not, even up to today, you'll see people that use names like that, birthdays, anniversaries, the kid's name, the dog's name, anything like that, to create the passwords. They're just very insecure. So on social engineering, you can have phishing, people that start like asking you questions, so see what you do. You can do baiting, that they throw you something to see what you reply to. Say, so what is this? And then you get a reply. On the quid pro quo, it's that you get something for something. Right? They give you something for something. So they give you, like case in point, how many times have you seen something on the internet? It goes, oh, we'll give you a free sample of this. So what do? You fill up your name, your address, your email address, and maybe your phone number. So now these people already have your name, where you live, your email address, and your phone number. So maybe you're using your phone number to use password for somewhere else, but they give you that. Delegating is access to places where people just follow you. If you have a secure door and you open the door and the people come right behind you, they shouldn't. You should lock the door and then let them use their own ID to go in. We all do it. I do it. But you have to be aware that someone who's behind you, someone that you know, that has access to the area. If I'm walking into some place, my data center, and I see somebody that I don't know following me, I'll stop and say, hey, who are you, and why are you following me, and why you don't have your ID to get in? That's similar to piggybacking. You just piggyback next to someone behind you and get into a system. Shoulder surfing is people that are always looking over your shoulder to see what you're typing, see what you're doing, especially when you do a password, something like that, just to see how you do something, and to gain access to a system just by looking at what you're doing. So most of these problems can be solved just by training the employee. Someone in your organization that can cause harm is called an insider threat. It's someone that is trusted, that it works there, but they will do some error, something intentionally or not, but then they might have the intentions to do harm, but they cause a loss of data or anything like that. So to prevent this, you do some background checks on your new hires. Make sure that their background, where they come from, the performance in previous jobs, and things like that. And then you enforce what's called the principal or least privilege. The principal least privilege means that you give the user only the access that they need in order to do their jobs. Right? If you don't have to print something, you have access to see it, but you cannot print it. You see it, but you cannot modify it. Or sometimes data entry people can enter data, but they cannot delete the data. So they can enter new information, but whatever is there, that's it. So if they make a mistake, they have to call a manager, someone has the access to do it. But you give it only access for what they need to do. And that's how you design your check and balances for employee behavior. Make sure that see how they behave, what the performance is, and stuff like that, just to make sure that nothing's going to happen. And then you deploy what's called DLP, a data loss prevention, which is just a plan to identify your data and prevent loss. Right? There is another concept that I don't see in the book that's called separation of duties. Separation of duties is another principle for security where I'm not able to do everything from A to Z for a process completely. I can only do half of the process. Someone else needs to do the other half of the process. For example, if I can install the software on a computer, let's say Windows. So I have access to that. And then I can join the machine to the domain, but I'm not able to add users to the machine, like privileged users to the machine. Somebody else has to come in and add the users. You have access to install the software, install the Windows, join the domain. So the machine is part of the domain and all that, but who's going to use it? Now you have to create that user. Well, somebody else has to do that. You cannot do the two jobs and complete the whole job on your own. So it's separation of duties, because the person that actually create the accounts, he has no access to join that machine on the domain. So the machine is not on the domain. This person cannot add users to the machine. So see where I'm coming from? So it's separation of duties. One person does one thing and the other person does the other one. It seems inefficient, but it's just secure, because you don't give the full power to one person. Now you give it between two people, and they need to talk to each other. Say, okay, you do this. Now I'm able to do this. If you don't do A, I cannot do B. And I can do A, but it's kind of useless if I don't have someone to do B. So you need each other to do it. But that's what you separate the responsibilities to finish with the machine. Now we jump into more into the technology. There is what's called a denial of service attack, and that's when you send so much information to one computer, broadcasted, ping messages, requests to it, to get to a point that it will bring the system down. Of course, any computer, any system has a limit, right? So let's say I want to register students. I have a portal to register students, and I can easily handle 20, 30, 50 students at a time within 1 hour, or within, let's say within a few minutes, I can handle 50 users. What if I get 500 users at one time? What if I get 5,000 users at one time? So this system is going to be so busy, so bogged down, that it will completely not shut down, but it will get so slow that the real students trying to log in to register, he can't, because these other 500 are using the system and I'm 501. And I just one of the many that are there. So that creates what's called a denial of service attack. There are many types. A distributed denial of service attack is the one that you have several sources. You got either other attackers or zombie machines that they all attack at the same time. You have a distributed reflection denial of service attack, where they use other systems that they're kind of infected machines, and they connect to that one, and that works as a deflector to launch the attack. So it sees it's coming, let's say, from your home, but it's someone from India, I'm just saying a country, from India, that get a hold of your machine, and from that one launching the 100 registration at Miami-Dade College. So that's what it's called, a distributed. Then they got the amplified, which is a request that comes in, and then it gets multiplied to multiple triggers and to the same target. So it goes everywhere. The permanent denial of service attack is also, it's so much damage that you do to the machine that the machine gets, let's say it crashes. So when it crashes, because of all the service that it got, that the software is completely bugged down, it's completely crashed, that's when you call it permanent denial of service attack. And then the friendly denial of service attacks are usually unintentional attacks, no malicious intent. I might just be scanning my network, and it just happened that I hit one system and the software hits it like 10 times in a row within a few seconds. And then it goes to the next one, the next one, the next one. It starts going like that. And all is doing, if I do a discovery of my network, you're doing mostly like a friendly denial of service attack, because you're going to every system on your network, and you try to identify them. So you're not intending to attack anything. It might affect a little bit of the system, but it's not a malicious intent. Now remember when we did the three-way handshake, that you do a SYN and then a SYN act to sync and a sync acknowledgement and back and forth. So when a denial of service attack, what you do is that you send so many SYNs at the same time that's when you get the server so busy. This is, let's say, a server that can handle 1 or 2 or 3 connections, and now you get 6 at the same time, and it will affect the system, the performance of that web server. Now, this is a distributed denial of service attack, where you have the attacker in a remote location. He goes into those zombie machines where he put, like a little piece of software that sometimes you download this free utility. It's like, oh my God, look, this is a free utility to, I don't know, enhance your pictures, so put filters on images and fix them and whatever. But what you don't know is that embedded on that software, you got a zombie. So when he gets the command from the attacker, then you'll start sending all those send requests to the same server, and you create a denial service attack. Now, when they analyze that attack, they will see that attack coming from your machine, and the attacker is way behind, hidden with he cannot be seen. So everything is coming from your machine, not from there. So that's why you have to be careful with stuff that you put in your machine, and when you install free software or something that has no licensing, that those freewares are you have to be careful. So there are other attacks that you can get. There's some on the wireless that you can get on the wireless. Authentication problems, lack of encryption, flaws on the software, things like that will create problems on your network. The on-path attack is what's called the man in the middle. That is on the path. Someone intercepts the traffic, redirects it to me, then I process the traffic and I send it back out. And the end-to-end communication on the two ends don't realize that I'm capturing redirecting the traffic in the middle towards me, and then I send it out. The DOS attack is just when you start sending attacks on your Wi-Fi, on your wireless, and you de-authenticate people. So people have to reconnect again. And they keep on doing that. Many reasons to do that. Some of them is that if you have to re-authenticate again, then of course you have to send your username and your password, right? So if I have a capture of 100 users trying to reconnect again to the Wi-Fi, and I take all that data, don't you think I'll be able to recover that and inspect it and get the username and the passwords? So that's what the auth attack would do. Insecure protocols, so protocols that are unsecure. Remember, Telnet is very insecure, so don't use Telnet on your network unless it's really, really required for something that's not really, really, really important. So you want to have some protocols that are secure through SSH, through TLS, anything that is encrypted. Any connection has to be through a secure channel. Your web pages also, you're transmitting important data, sensitive data. That has to be through HTTPS. So make sure the protocols that you're using are actually secure protocols. DNS poisoning or DNS spoofing is a way to modify your DNS and intercept those DNS requests. So I can have someone go to, I'm going to open my browser, I'm going to go to www.mdc.edu, and if I go, let's say I'm a Comcast customer, and I try attack that 75.75.75.75, the Comcast DNS server, and I redirect that to another IP address that is not Miami-Dade, and I have another server with exactly looking web page, and so when a student tries to log into the records or something like that, then I'm actually mimicking everything. So I redirect that to somewhere else without you knowing it, because I poisoned that DNS. I affected that DNS, and I'm giving you the wrong IP address that the DNS is supposed to give you, because I intercept that communication. Backdoors are well known. Backdoors is just flaws on the software or people that actually create backdoors. We have a backdoor at the college, which is a separate VPN. But it's a VPN. It's protected. It terminates on a firewall, so it is protected by the firewall. But for us, it's a backdoor. For us in IT, it's a backdoor because if the main firewalls fail or something else fails, we can always get in through that separate connection. It's a separate firewall, so that nobody else uses, only us. But it is a full-fledged firewall, and it's a full-fledged VPN concentrator. So it is a backdoor. But if you don't protect that well, then it could be open for exploit from anyone. Now you also heard of malware. Malware it's malicious software that is designed to do harm or intrude in your system or make some changes of things that you don't want. So a virus is a program that replicates itself and it goes from one machine to another, kind of like a cold, right? You get it, you get close to me, then I'll give you the code, and it goes on like that. So if you have a computer in a lab that it has a virus, it can easily spread to the other computers and until it attacks the whole lab or your whole enterprise. You have Trojan horses, which is a program disguise. So like those utilities that I was telling you, that if you download a utility to um, put filters on pictures and enhance your images, it might have something inside to capture your screen, capture your keyboard, and send it to someone else. So you gotta be careful with those Trojans. Then you got a worm. That the worm is a program that actually travels from one computer to another. That's what's called a worm, like a worm that wiggles around. It wiggles around through all these systems, and sometimes it's actually going around looking for data. So it goes from one computer to another because I'm done with this one, so let me go to another one. And then not like the virus. The virus is spread to a lot of computers at the same time. And the intention is to do the more I can get, the better. But the worm doesn't replicate. The worm just kind of travels from one to the other and is looking for which machine in this system has data that I can use, right? And then a bot, which is, it's a short for robot, is a program that it will start whenever the attacker wants it to start, like like those zombie softwares, that whenever they trigger it, they will start. Or something that gets deployed across a whole bunch of computers and says, this date at this time, you're going to start doing this, right? And the one that has been in the news for the last couple of years is the ransomware. Ransomware, they'll come in, they will lock your computer completely. So all your data is completely locked. And they give you a warning that says, hey, if you don't pay me so much amount of money, I would not give you the code to unlock it. Some of these ransomware people have got paid and never released the code, or they might not even have it. Some places, yes, they got the code and they unlocked the machines. Here we had a ransomware once at the college many years ago, and it was because a power user, that he had a lot of access on the network, he brought in his machine from home, and that personal machine had a ransomware. When he connected to the network and he logged into one of the servers that he managed, that ransomware transferred into that machine and he locked it. Luckily, the college, we have a secure network, so we had full backups of that system. So the moment that we had a ransomware, they shut it off completely and removed that other laptop that had the original ransomware, and they did a restore, and that was the end of it. But it could have been very, very, very bad if we wouldn't have stopped that like right away. And all these things you have to. The sooner you can find it, sooner you can stop it, the better. Right? It's like a call. If you can isolate that person, then nobody else will get it. You can isolate the first few people that got it, then nobody else will spread out. So it works just like that. And this is some of the ransomware, how they look like. They just have this warning, hey, we got all this, we got your things, and sometimes it might be fake, but sometimes it can be really dangerous that locks your data. So keep copies of your data, keep a secure copy somewhere, because if something like this happens, you might just want to sit at home. Okay, let me just format the machine, delete everything, and that's it. It happens to a friend of mine that a couple months ago, they got something and the machine locked up, and I said, hey, where's your data? And he goes, oh, no, we backed it up. It's right here. So we just took the machine, formatted the machine, reinstalled everything, make sure they had a good antivirus and things like that, and get the machine up and running again. Now, these malware programs, it gets me because people that write these malware programs are geniuses. These people are programmers that they know the system in and out, and they know what they're doing. They know it very well. So if they're doing that, chances are they could get a job in a company making a lot of money, but no, they decide to be in a garage or somewhere in a bedroom, in a dorm, in a university, and then they start doing all these attacks. So some of these are encrypted. The malware is encrypted, so it can be detected. It is undetectable because you cannot see what's in there. Some of them are stealth, that they, like the utilities, they disguise themselves as a utility. So you install it, you think you're doing a legitimate program, and it's not. Then if polymorphism is a way for the malware to change every time it goes to another system. So what happens is if I'm looking for a specific pattern to say, oh, that's how I identify this malware, well, guess what? It changed. So now it goes to the next one. It's like a variant. It's like a variant of the virus. So when it has this variant, then you have to start all over again to identify it and look for it to see if you can catch it. By the time that you're done with this, it went to another system and it changed again. So It's difficult. Smart software. Time dependence as those that are, yeah, they activate a specific time. It says on this date at this time do this because I'm going to do a launch an attack to Miami-Dade, and in April 1st I'm going to go and send all the systems attack to Miami-Dade. So they're all on time dependence, and that's what's called like a logic bomb, right? They start on a condition to do, and they do one job, and they all do the same at the same time. Now, systems can have these characteristics, just one of them, or many of them, or a combination of those. They're not just, they can be stealth and encrypted, and they might also have a polymorphism to modify themselves and then be able to trigger at a specific time. So it's all in one. So there are many ways to prevent yourself and to manage these things. So you can do a security risk assessment that you evaluate your network and see where your flaws are. And then you do a business risk assessment to see what is going to what problems is going to cause in your business when something happens. Case in point, security risk. Okay, if someone's going to break into the Miami-Dade database of student information or financial information with all your financial information, and what about when that happens? And what is the business risk assessment for us? What's the business risk? What is going to happen? Can we continue working? Do we have to shut down? How long would it take to recover from that? So so you have to create like a whole, a business process to accomplish, this goal. Then you can do a vendor risk assessment, which is also a third-party company that evaluates your security and see if you're compliant. And there's someone from outside, not people from inside. It's kind of like you trying to see if your house is hurricane proof. Well, you might not know all the flaws that you might have, so you want to hire an expert to come and do that and take a look at all your doors, your windows, make sure that you're protected correctly, right? So that's the same thing with the vendor risk assessment. They can come and look at everything. A posture assessment is examination of everything to make sure that everything on the network it's the way it's supposed to be, and it complies with all the regulations, that your Windows is up to date, that all the patches are there, and all that. So if we would have had a posture assessment when that person would bring the laptop, we brought in that laptop, scan it, checked it before you connect it to the network, and then would have said, nope, you know what, there's something here, and you should not connect this computer to the network. So it's very dangerous to bring outside devices into your network. Sometimes you cannot avoid that, but if you create a policy that says nothing from the outside can be connected to my network, then you protect your network even better. If you bring something, it has to go through a posture assessment to make sure that it is at the security level that you want for your system. And then you can do a security audit, which is either you can do it by yourself. I can have another company that can come in and take a look at your network and say, hey, we were able to find all this information. We had an assessment not too long ago, and then somebody found that there was a department that had a PDF file on their local drive, and it has not critical information, but it was more like home addresses, driver license. I think it had to do something with permission to drive a company vehicle, a Miami-Dade vehicle, something like that. So they found that paper, and it had, copies of the person's driving license and the home addresses and stuff like that. So that's personal data we didn't want to be out there. And this employee happened to have a copy of all those files into his local drive, which it shouldn't be in there. Another, human error. But that's why we do those security audits every once in a while, at least once or twice a year. Now, there are different ways to do these assessments. You can do the vulnerability assessment to identify, holes on your network. And it could be authenticated. So a user just like myself that have access. So I'm a trusted user. So let's see, okay, I'm a trusted user. Where can I get to? And by mistake or something, can I get access to other things that I'm not supposed to? And you can have the unauthenticated, which is just someone that starts like a student that comes in, plugs in the equipment and said, okay, I don't have any authentication here. I'm not trusted on the network, but then where can I go? What can I do? Can I find vulnerability somewhere? Can I find some flaws somewhere in a software or on a server, and I can get to access to those things? Another way to do it is through a pen testing or penetration testing, which is a tool that also it goes in and it looks for all those exploits. It looks for every port that is open on your system. It will do more like a denial of service attack on all these servers, and it says, okay, from all these ports, RDP ports, SSH, Telnet, HTTP, HTTPS, NTP, all those ports that you're aware of, it will try to get into those ports to see if it can get access to the system. Now, if I have a database should not have a web server. So if I do a pen test and I say, hey, this is a database server, it has SQL, but for some reason it has a web server open, and that could be a way to break into the system and get into your database. So that software needs to be either turned off or uninstall. Well, ideally uninstall if you don't need it, but a pen test will find those things. You can also have what's called the red team, blue team exercise, where the red team, of course, is the one that's trying to attack, and the blue team is the one that tries to defend the network. Most of these red team, blue team exercises, you don't, well, you can do it on a live network, but also you can do it on a live environment. You copy your data, and they said, okay, let's try here to break it and bring it down and all that, because you're not going to do that to your real system. So, or you can do it on your real system too if you want to take the risk. But it's another way to find flaws on your network. So then you have your red team is the one that do the social engineering, penetration testing, offensive security, so trying to break in. And you got the blue team who's trying to look at the logs, look at everything, look at the all the alarms, incident responses, all that, just to see to mitigate what happens here. Like a while back ago, I received some alerts from some system that somebody was trying to log in to the battery backup system, the UPSs. And he went to one and then another and another and another. So what's going on here? Someone is trying to log into the UPSs, which is not a critical system. But if you log into the UPS, which is the battery backup system, you can actually shut it down. And whatever that feeds power to, it will go down. It will just be powered off completely. So I got started to get all those messages. I went into the system and I looked, and there was one specific IP address where everything was coming from. I was like, huh. So what did I do? I went through my the router. I look at the ARP table. I went to see if which switch was feeding from. I went to the switch, look at the MAC address table, find exactly which port that system was connected to, and then boom, shut down the port. Simple. It took me 5-10 minutes, and I shut down the port. Well, needless to know that there was a company that was paid to do an assessment and do a pen test. And that's what they were doing, but they didn't tell me. So in a way, it was good because I reacted to it. I was kind of like a blue team. I reacted to it and I mitigated, and I stopped it. The problem was that they had to restart all over again the next day. But that's what happened. You see something and then you react to it. And then you get a purple team that is the one that improves the security, the posture. That's the one that get all the reports from the blue and the red team, and combine them and said, okay, so now we're gonna do this is the actions that we're going to take to mitigate what we have here. So this pen test, what they do, they use a scanning tool that it will discover everything in your network. So it would find all the hosts, then you'll find all the services that the host is running, right, on every host. If it can, it will look for the software configuration. Windows can report to you if you ask for it remotely what version of Windows is running and what patches are running and things like that. So you can capture that. You can see which ports are open, which are closed, which are filtered on every host. You just do a port scan, simple like that. Is 80 responding? Is it 443 responding? Is 389 for RDP responding? So you find all those ports that are open. If there's any firewall, what type it is, and any configuration it has, any software configuration, you can sometimes go into the software and see how the software is configured, and of course the unencrypted and poorly encrypted data, or encrypted with a very low security that can be broken into, or just on the plain sight, like this document that we found with the driver licenses. It was basically a PDF file, and it was wide open. Just open it and you see it. The information is there. So the scanning tools will do all of this. Yeah, some of the tools that they use here, I never use them. We don't use them in the college, but yeah, Nmap is a utility that will go out and find all your hosts, and it might find some which ports are open. If it has SSH, a telnet, or something like that. Nessus is similar to that, but it does a little more into the scans, right? The Nmap and Metasploit. I think it's an old software, but Metasploit it was a combination of scanning, and it will find the exploit techniques to see what anything that you can attack. Now, you can also go and get a list of flaws on different softwares because they publish those things. They say, oh, Windows has all these flaws and all these things that you can attack. So if you get all that list, Metasploit can actually get that list and say, okay, well, I know the Windows have this vulnerability. If you didn't apply the patches for the past 6 months. So I can go into a Windows system and try to find those flaws and see if they're there, and then report that, hey, by the way, this system hasn't been updated for the past 6 months, and this patches are not being applied. You need to apply those. And there's this and other products. It's not just these three. There are other products probably more sophisticated than this and more costly that it will do this and more. So this is an example of Metasploit. You see how it did some HTTP probes, and it found the admin password to be 1234. That's probably the default. That was on a TP-Link wireless router, so they left that open. And it has SMB Pro, so it found I guess sharing drives and things like that. So it will just go and find those ports that are open and they can be accessible. If you're sharing files, sharing anything, and then they can look at it, they can go into those files and look at the files and see what kind of information is in there. So this one doesn't do that, but this one at least Metasploit tells you if something is open, and then other tools will actually go into those files and see deeper what's inside those folders, what files are in there, what type of files, and what kind of information is in those files. So another way to do this is what's called a honeypot. Honeypot is a decoy. It's a system that is there and it's open. So designed for actually gather intel. It's kind of like you leave your car in a dark street and you leave some boxes inside and you see something that looks like a purse, and then you see who's going to break into it. That's a honeypot. It's a system that you leave very desirable, kind of open. You're like, oh my God, look at what I found, and they start like scanning those. But what you don't know is that I'm collecting data from you to see where you're coming from, what you're doing, what kind of scans you're doing on my system, and how you're trying to get into my system. Because this one is I'm working the way around. And a honeynet is the same thing, which is a network of honeypots, and they're very effective. So you just put like some bait and let someone try to break into it. So now, aside from your network security or security assessments on your ports and things like that, you have to look also at the physical security, right? Only the trusted staff should be able to access the secure areas. No one else should go in there. All the IDFs, the individual classes on every building or every floor, and of course the MDF, where you have your main distribution frame, where you have all your routers and your switches, your fiber coming in, all your DMARC and everything, all these services, they should be protected. You shouldn't have anyone going there. Here at the college, if a contractor, AT&T, or anybody comes in, even the air conditioning guy wants to change the filters on the air conditioning, that person has to be escorted. He cannot be left alone. Although all he's doing is going in, change the filters, and get out. You don't know that, so you cannot let him in and leave him alone doing something. They might trip on something. They just pull a cable. They might just like, I don't know. It happened in Miami-Dade that not in the MDF, but more like in the IDF, that the cleaning people plug in a vacuum cleaner on an outlet, and it brings down the circuit, and it shuts down the network equipment. We have UPSs that will hold it for a little bit, but it will shut down the power. And it happened a couple of times, or people that start plugging, heavy equipment, contractors that come in and start plugging in heavy equipment or something like that, and they might affect your system. So that's why you need to keep locks and authorize people only to those places, and keep all those security measures, and create what's called a secure perimeter of your protected area. So there are many ways to protect those rooms. I mean, you can have a keypad, right? Enter a number on a keypad. Those numbers should also be recycled every once in a while. Every person might have one code individually. You can have an access badge. Here, the Miami-Dade classrooms, I have a badge that opens the door. I can unlock the doors, unlock them again. You might have a biometric scan, your fingerprint, your retina to your face recognition, something like that if you go sophisticated. You can have an access control vestibule where you have two doors, right? You go through the first door, then they can make I guess assess who you are, like in a admissions area or something like that. And if you're allowed to continue, then you continue for the next door, but the next door is also a locked door. To get into the Miami-Dade data center, I have to go through three doors. You go to the first door, there's nothing there, there's another door, then there's people sitting there, and then I have another door to get into the data center. So but it's secure. You can lock your cabinets. Make sure that all your servers and switches and routers, anything that cannot be touched, where there's a lot of people coming in, then you lock the cabinet. You cannot protect, if you cannot protect the room, then of course you have to lock the cabinet. There's a place at the downtown that we share a space with other companies, and what we do is we have access to the same room, but then the cabinets are locked. So when I go there, I have the key to open my own cabinets, but the other cabinets are protected that I cannot access. Also have the smart locker. It's allowed access control to the equipment, computers, and all that. There's a lot of these things that based on your ID, you can access some places and not other places, and it depends on your credentials. So this is an example similar to, I guess, the Miami-Dade data center that have to go through one door, and then there's a data room in the back that you have to go through another door. So there are at least two doors they have to go through in order to get to a secure room. So then you can also have intrusion detection, right? Physical intrusion, motion detection, cameras, tamper detection, asset tags. Asset tags is like a RFID or even a Bluetooth tag that if the equipment gets moved from a certain location, that you get alerted about it. Tamper detection is like if someone opens something changes temperature, voltage variation, frequency, certain kinds of things. So you can have sensors for that. And of course, the camera is a motion detector because the cameras will capture who it is in the area, and the motion detection that someone is moving in there, or even the door sensors that someone opens the door, then you get alerted that someone entered the room. At least the door was open. Yeah, the RFID tags are now very popular. That they can be tracked and track equipment, and it will send messages when it has come into a place. That's sort of how UPS does that. It's just that it's scanned manually, but you can see where your box is going through different areas when he got into an airport, and when he landed in another city, and he got into the truck, and he got to a distribution facility, and from there went to another facility, and every time he's getting scanned, it's being tracked. So that's some of the things that you can do with detection. Now, device hardening is like the word says. You take your device and you make it hard to get broken into, right? Either for from the network or software attacks or anything like that. And there are multiple layers where you can protect it. So security patches is one of those. So you want to make sure that all your patches are applied on your operating system. You have to keep a log and keep track of how often you check for new updates, firmware changes, new features, to close security gaps, any of those. So you have to also keep vigilant on your system to make sure that you're aware of any new release of firmware or something that was released for your equipment. So on the security patches, you have to do discovery. Make sure to see what is missing. Then you standardize. Usually you don't apply all the patches at once or for everything. Sometimes you have to identify what the patches are, and any changes that they have, if it applies to you or not. So you standardize on which is the one you're going to be using. Then you do defense in depth. You just see where, how far you want to go into the security. You do that vulnerability report to see if the system has any flaws, anything that can get broken into. You implement all those fixes, and then you do an assessment to make sure that it is patched and is everything is working fine. And you do the risk mitigation, which says, everything is working fine, everything is secure, and we guarantee, we just check that. And then 6 months later, you start all over again. Now, on your devices, you got to keep track of those credentials. Who has access to your equipment and what level they have access. So, yeah, the recommendation is everything should be done also through SSH keys. So, thing is more secure. You're using SSH, and that is not only, it's not that much secure than password. Just the password alone is one protection, but the SSH will actually protect your data as it comes across that no one can get into. And those encrypted keys for SSH are difficult to crack, right? So, sometimes, well, when you work on the enterprise, you'll see that different people have different levels of access. So it depends on what they do, it depends what they need to do. You can provide them with that level. You don't give them the full access, you get partial access. So some accounts are privileged accounts that they will have more access than others, and it depends on your duties, right? It also, some of the precautions that you can have with these accounts is to you can have to limit the use, to limit the location, limit the duration, limit the access, limit the privacy. You limit the use is what can you do and what you cannot do. Limit the location. You have to be connected directly to the equipment. You cannot do it remotely. Can you do it remotely from the office, or can you do it remotely through a VPN? There's a lot of things that we cannot connect to from a VPN connection. We actually have to remote into one of the local machines in the college, and from there, that machine, which is inside the college, is able to connect to other things. So I usually don't do things from my home. I do it like that. You can have a limited duration, that if you can only be connected for a certain time. And also the disconnect is very important. A lot of systems, you can set it up that after 5, 10, 15 minutes of inactivity, log you out. You don't want to leave that open just in case. You might be looking at some papers, look at some things, and then you get logged out. But you have to keep it open. But if you walk away and you leave the system open, so the limited duration will help you to mitigate that. Limited access, it just, you have more different access for different people, and also the limited privacy. Some things are encrypted, some things are not encrypted, and what things can I get and what things I cannot get. Now, when it comes to a system performance, you have to be careful what services and protocols you have enabled. You have to enable only the things that you want, basically. So you reduce access, the access path, right? How many ways can you get into a system? You choose your secure protocols. Tell me like SSH, secure keys, what you want to use to protect that system. To reduce the startup processes, it's just that sometimes these systems, when they come up, they can do so many things. Even a Windows machine, when you boot up a Windows machine, they connect to your shared drives, they connect to a printer, they connect to this, they connect to some databases, they load some software, they load some licenses. So sometimes this can bog down the system and also give too much access to someone who doesn't require it. So you have to reduce the startup processes. And by doing that, you disable those unneeded services. Things that don't need to be there, disable it. That's even like we said with the network before, that those ports are not being in use. You take out the VLANs. I mean, ideally, you want to disable the ports, but if you cannot disable the port, you don't want to disable the port. I don't like that. At least I take out the networks, the VLANs. So all my different networks on the ports, I take them out, leave it as a default with nothing on it. So anybody can get in and make the changes and stuff like that, but no one can just connect and get into the network right away. You declutter the software. Of course, when you got too many things, too much software, too many duplicate applications to do the same thing, just take all that out, and that's how you streamline your network. And then you close all those unused ports. If you have some application that is using opening a port, then take out that application. If you don't need it, you don't have, there's no need for that, then take it out. That's what I at work. I have actually two machines, one that is more secure than the other. The other one doesn't have access to many things, but it has more ports open. so that when if it gets broken into, they can't get too much stuff. My other machine has access to a lot more stuff, has more secure data, but then a lot of ports are closed. It's a lot of things that I can do from there, but that one is very limited to get it from the outside. So that's why I have two systems. Passwords. How many times people have told you to, hey, change the password, which requires minimum than 8 characters and uppercase, lowercase, numbers, special characters, and things like that. Well, um, passwords, usually when they're stored, they use a hashing, which is an algorithm that it will convert your string of characters into something different, right? So secure hash, SHA is a secure hash algorithm that it encrypts your data as it goes through. Um, so the different version, you got SHA-0, which is the original, then SHA-1, SHA-2, and SHA-3. SHA-2 and 3 are usually used together for more authentication, but it's authentication for encrypting your password. So you want to make sure that none of the old protocols are enabled and you're using some of the latest protocols, either SHA-2, SHA-3, or the combination of both. So like I said, hashing is a way to encrypt the data, right? So you can have your plain text, it goes through the hashing algorithm. So you get a hash value, it's a number that is encrypted. You can dehash it and then get that plain text. And then your file can be encrypted with a key and then decrypted with a key. Now, usually what happens with the hash keys or hash values is that you can get a file, right? And it's a program file, and you run a hash on that file, and it creates a string of characters that is kind of like a fingerprint of that file. So many companies give you the file and the hash. So which is it's called an MD5 hash. So you get the MD5 from the company, you download the file, and then you run that hash against the file. And if they match, that means that the file that you have is a legitimate, unchanged file, because when you run the hash, it's supposed to give you exactly the same value. So if the value matches, the company says, okay, if you run a hash on this, an MD5 hash on this file, you should get this string of numbers. If it doesn't match, your file that you downloaded was modified somewhere along the line, or is not the legitimate file. So that's some of the uses for the hashing algorithms. And we all know about the anti-malware software, right? It's also the antivirus, anti-malware, similar softwares. But anti-malware will detect anything that comes in that has a malware software. It will look for a specific fingerprints, a specific string of characters, a string of programming, and it alert you, that something is not correct on that program. It will look for file sizes, make sure that file has not changed from one day to the next. See, the anti-malware also look for that system performance is declined because the computer is doing something or is running all the software in the background doing other things. So it will alert you about that. Any unusual error messages, sometimes you get some error messages that are caused by the malware. Memory losses, sometimes you see your memory being overtaken for some process that you don't know what it is. Rebooting, display quality, things that sometimes when the screen flickers and it changes something in your screen, I get worried. I get worried because I know something did something on my computer and the screen just flashed, something changed. So you got to be careful when you see that. And the malware would actually capture those things and alert you about it. Now, the anti-malware can be installed in many places. You got host-based, which is installed on a host. You can also do server-based, so you install it on a server, and your client on the computer, you install a client, and the client keeps checking on the server. You can have a network-based. It's also installing your network and is controlling everything that goes through your network. Or cloud-based, now everything is cloud, so your computer will actually go into the cloud and keep checking for updates and changes and fingerprints and all that. So the more protected that you are on your system, the better you are. Now, asset disposal is very, very important. All those discarded systems, you don't know where they end up. And they might have some companies' data, something that companies documents that you have, customer clients. So you want to be careful that when you dispose that old equipment, that everything is stripped down. Okay, you can have companies actually come in. Miami-Dade has a company that when we dispose hard drives, they actually have a shredding machine, just like the same thing that you shred paper. This thing will actually take the metal and break it into tiny little pieces, and they do it in front of you. They bring the machine to the company, to Miami-Dade, of course, to the loading zone. We bring all the drives and right in front of us, start throwing all the drives one by one. They don't keep one drive, and we make sure that everything goes there. So this is the certified electronic equipment destruction that is a protection. So nothing can be recovered from those drives. People would have done that. They drill through it to a hard drive and things like this. Hard drives are usually the one that will keep data, tapes, if they have old tapes, old CDs and all that. We have a shredding machine for CDs, and we throw the CDs and make tiny little pieces. It's funny, usually when my credit card expires and things like that, I bring my old credit cards and I throw it in there, and it makes these tiny little pieces that no one could ever get a credit card back in one piece. So you can use those services, and they're expensive, but it's the only way to make sure that nothing happens. Uh, my wife works at a school, and some parents sometimes they donate all computers. And when you look at the computers, sometimes I tell them, listen, by the way, this is your drive. I took it out because it has personal data. I saw your income tax, I saw your pictures, I saw all of this, and there's documents, and you gotta be careful. So if you're gonna donate something, pull out the hard drive, and then you destroy it on whichever way you want, or make sure that you delete everything. There's softwares that can actually do that, but you have to protect that data for your company and even personal data. So to wrap all this together, you need a security policy. Any organization should have a security policy that identifies the goals, your risk, authority levels, what happens when something happens, who reacts, what's the procedure to mitigate any problems. Uh, so you should have also the security policy in to say the different groups that will handle different areas and how things will get documented and how things actually will get taken care of, and then who's going to at the end certify that everything was done correctly. So it's a whole procedure that a company should set up just to make sure that everything is protected. Some of the policies can be as simple as your password protection. Make sure that your passwords change every so often. At the college, we change every 3 months. And yes, it's hard because you have to keep remembering a new password every 3 months, and it's like about 15 characters. So it's a long password, so it's hard. But it's just a way to protect the data and protect your account. So the goal for these policies, yeah, ensure that only authorized people can access your resources. You prevent those unauthorized access. You prevent sensitive data from not being seen by people that should not be seeing it. The hardware, the software, any damage that can be caused, intentional, not intentional. That you protect that. You create a secure environment where if anything happens, you can recover from it. Case in point, when we had that machine with the crypto locker, that we're able to identify the machine right away within an hour, and luckily affected only one server, but the server got restored, and no, there was no harm done, but it was scary. Um, And of course, please let the employees know their responsibilities and how they have to protect the data, how they need to protect their own passwords, how they need to protect the systems, how they need to protect the secure areas, and like that. And sometimes you have to have people to sign a consent to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and now you have signed this, you're liable to say that you're here to protect your data and make sure that nothing happens to it, and that you'll do everything on your position, your security level, and as an employee to make sure that all my information, especially my data that is critical data, is protected. And this is one of the biggest problems. The BYODs, the bring your own device. It's happening a lot more. Students, you bring your phone that connect to the network through the Wi-Fi. You bring your tablets that connect to the network. You can bring your laptops that you might connect through a wire or through the wireless, and it's a risk every time you bring those things. So you can have, they bring your own application, bring your own cloud, bring your own technology, or choose your own device. So these variations of the same concept of bring your own device. So if you want to protect your enterprise or your network, then you have to do some onboarding and offboarding procedures. And the onboarding procedures, they might posture that device and set what Windows you have, what antivirus, what browser is the latest version of the browsers, anything that you have in there that you want to categorize what you want to make sure that it is on that computer enabled and updated, and you can check that before you do the onboarding. And you might even have to install the application to control that computer or to monitor those things. And when you leave and you're no longer, let's say, using that system on my network, then you can do the offboarding and that can get removed, right? Um, so this can be handled. Some mobile devices can be managed like that through software, but some of the iPads can do that, but it is a specialized software to do it, and it requires management and it requires the onboarding and the offboarding, but it is possible to do, and it can be controlled. It could be more of a pain for the users to have to go through this on every device that you bring, and if you change, you have to do it again and all that, but it's just for the security of your data integrity and the security of your network. So when you get hired and any company, you may have to sign a AUP, acceptable user policy, which discloses everything that you can do and you cannot do on your network. And it can even explain your penalties for violating. Some places might say if you happen to be found to be doing this, you might get fired from your position for doing something, or taking data on a used drive, or taking printouts for home that you're not supposed to take it like that. So some restrictions will have your obligations, and that the computer is not for personal use. Then that you'll be aware of activities on the network and that you can be monitored, because you keep logs, we keep logs of all the communication across out to the internet and all that. We don't keep it because we want to track what the person is doing, but we want to keep it for protection to see where things are happening. So, but if something happens, we can actually go back and say, at what time, where did it go, and even who was doing that and from which computer. And by that information, we can bring it out all the way to the wire to see where that system was connected to. If anything happens, or suspect that anything happened, you're supposed to provide that information, tell someone that report it immediately. Always sign off and lock your devices. Like I said before, if you're on your system, please, when you walk away, lock it. Or you can have a policy where it locks automatically if you walk away from your system. Don't do anything illegal. That's a given. And don't go around the security restrictions. Don't try to break into a door or something like that where you're not supposed to get into, because it will get you in trouble and you can get dismissed from your job. So it's critical. It's just to protect the data integrity of your network. So you have to make sure that everything is included. Now, for certain employees and even contractors, when you bring people from the outside, you might want to sign what it is, a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, that it defines what is confidential and private on the organization, and that if you leave, you cannot take this information to anywhere. Imagine if you work, at a hospital or anything where you have a lot of personal information, and it's restricted information, so you don't want to someone to just take that information out. And not even just personal information. Imagine if you're a business and you have your customer base, and someone's going to quit and take all your customer list or something like that. So some non-disclosure agreements would say that when you leave the place, you cannot work with those customers for a year or 2 years or something like that. We have co-workers that have left Miami-Dade and they work for, let's say, AT&T, so they cannot be assigned to a Miami-Dade account. They can work from AT&T with any other customer but Miami-Dade. They cannot work with us for a year or so until some time passes, and then they can do business with Miami-Dade, but not as soon as they leave, because of things like that. Because now you know too much about my business, and you know things that the company is not supposed to know. Now, this is more like an advice here. For your password policy, some tips. You change your default passwords. Don't ever leave anything as a default password, because you can go on the web and find those things. They're everywhere. And when you are in a bind and you forgot your default password, you can actually Google it and find it. So the first thing you do on any system, change the default passwords. Avoid personal information, anything that has to do with birth dates, names, kids, mother's name, anything like that. Anniversary, just take that. Real words, you can actually remove the real words, try to encrypt the words, make sure they don't look like a word. The long is strong, so 15, 16 characters long, it's a good length of a password. 8 is not really secure anymore, so some places still want you allow you to do like 8 characters, but you should make an effort to do it a little bit longer, at least 12 characters or something like that. Increase the complexity. Make sure that that password has some encrypted things. I have seen some passwords on Miami-Dade that when I look at them, it's like, how in hell they come up with this? Because they put all things that look backwards, so they don't make any sense. But those are the best passwords. So don't use sticky notes. Don't write it and paste it on the back of the monitor or underneath your keyboard. Please don't. Even when you have to write down a password, write them one half in one paper, another half another paper. Don't keep it on the same paper. Don't ever email a password. You you can't just send that through email. Email is unencrypted data unless you have some service that is encrypting your data. But emails are not secure. If you want, you can send, like I said, one portion. Or what I have done is that I email your password. Okay, hey, this is the password, and then I send you, I call you. I said, hey, you got the password? Okay, that number is not a 1. Change it for a 7. You see that, I don't know, capital B is not a capital B. It's supposed to be an 8. Change it for an 8. And I do that with like at least 4 or 5 characters on the password. So I send you something that is not the real password, but it looks very close. But then I'll call you and say, okay, now you need this. Or that's the password, but what you're missing at the end, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's not going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, but it is missing something. I'm going to tell you what it is, but I tell you that over the phone, so I don't email you those things. And don't reuse passwords. One of the worst things to use the same password for everything, because once your password gets compromised, then they will get access to all of the systems. So yeah, and for that you can have a password manager software to manage, if you have too many passwords, but it's better to have different password for everything. Yeah, Windows has settings on some of the systems to the password policies that you check marks. You said you need to use capitals, you can lower cases and all that. So you want to make sure that you have all of those enabled. And also with this one does have the password expiration, but yeah, you can have that. And then you see at the end it says remember 5 passwords. So you cannot use any of the 5 previous passwords that you have used in the past. So you have to keep changing it until you get another one. Some people cheat. They go and they change it, and then 2 days later they change it, and 2 days later they change it again. So they overcome those 5 passwords, and then they use the old one again. It's a no-no. You shouldn't be doing that, but I've seen people doing that. Now you can have also a privilege user agreement. which is for someone that it has a high position and it has a privileged account, that they sign this agreement that to to protect your data and to obey the your regulations. So it has the restrictions and consequences of violations. But this can list things like here it says you cannot stay on your account for too long. You just do what you need to do and then you sign off. You cannot stay sign on your account. Um, some of these privileged users should have frequent training to remind them of what to do, not to participate on social engineering, not to increase the complexity of the passwords and things like that. And then some of this can be monitored through a PAM, the Privileged Account Management, which is like a central point software. You log into that one system, and that one system will log you into multiple systems or to different systems. But then once you do that, it logs when you logged in, when you logged out. These doesn't log what you do, but at least it logs in when you logged in and when you logged out. So if something happens on the system, they can say, oh, it was Juan Sanchez who logged in this date at this time and he logged out at this time. And that's when this got broken into. So that's why you can trace it back to me. So, but that's a way to use the privileged user agreement to make sure that you are aware of all these things and the consequences if you don't follow the regulations. And lastly, this is the last slide. The anti-malware policy is also that provides the rules and on your enterprise of your software for installing programs, sharing files, external storage, and how that works. So some of the things that you might have there, every computer should have a malware detection and cleaning software. You cannot, you're not allowed to disable this or change it. Of course, not to uninstall it either, because you cannot change it. Case in point, Miami-Dade, we have an antivirus, and the antivirus cannot be removed, and you cannot turn it off. Then also indications of what to do when you see some malware, when something gets detected, what to do. Although a lot of these centralized softwares, if it's centralized with a server, it would actually set up an alert, and then they will call you even before you call them that something happened on your computer. Then the team should focus also maintaining the software measures, make sure that the software can be customized with what things to do, what not to do. So it has to be up to date and be watched constantly. So any changes that happens, any updates that needs to be done for the signatures to make sure that the malware is up to date with the signatures that it's supposed to be looking for. Other users should be the user should be prohibited from installing any authorized software, but that's more like a control, not just the malware, but also a control at the access level to make sure that your account is it has the privilege to do certain things, to install, what not to install. And then this system sends alerts everywhere to make sure that if something happens, the anti-malware, antivirus, all those softwares will send something, and it might even send you some notification saying, hey, this happens in your system. And this is the end of the module 10. So there's a lot of stuff. There's more common sense if you saw through the chapter. A lot of this common sense, with the passwords, with the access, with the secure areas, with the agreements that you sign, that you're aware of what's going to happen, you're aware of what to do, what not to do. Sometimes if you're not sure of something, if you can do or cannot do, then don't. Just don't, and ask before you do something. If it's a modification, a change, or anything that you're going to do, and you happen to have access to it, and you, like I said, you don't know, then just ask, for your supervisor. Say, hey, I'm trying to do this. Is it okay, or something? If you don't know, ask. It's better to ask than to do something and then be liable for some damage on your or loss of data in your organization. Okay. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you very much.